I don't know. Maybe I need to play hard to get. That would keep you on your toes. I thought she was going to snuggle deeper when the teeth came out. Ow. Sorry, honey bunch. I'll try to not let that happen again. Good. You wouldn't look nearly as handsome without those cute ears. Sleep, honey. We'll continue this discussion in the morning. She was asleep in a few seconds, and I discovered she was a snorer. Thankfully, it was cute little rumblings, and I fell asleep listening to them. 10 o'clock the next morning, there was a knock at the door. Pauline came out of the bed like she was fired from a cannon. I'm going to kill them. Maybe storming to the door naked wasn't the most thought-out course of action. Maybe me charging after her, naked as well, also wasn't a good idea. When she yanked the door open, Monica got a good look at both of us before she flamed red. Then she grinned and handed Pauline the tray she was carrying. Here, I thought you might need some nutrition. Carry on. Children. Pauline, honey, it looks like you have a lot to work with. I think I experienced my first body flush ever while Pauline giggled hysterically. Thanks, Mom. I'll get back to work as soon as breakfast is over. After she closed the door, we just grinned at each other. Well, that was embarrassing. It'll make a great story down the line. And how many future mothers-in-laws can tell her friends she knows everything to know about her son-in-law? I froze up. The wheels had just come off the tracks and she could see it in my face. Don't get upset, honey. I should have said potential mother-in-law. Maybe I shouldn't have spoken so soon, but you're everything I'm looking for in a man. Strong, confident, not scared of my father or his wealth. Somebody who can keep me in check when I start to do something stupid. And honey, I've done a lot of stupid things in the past. I was looking for my clothes as I talked. We've known each other for a month. I don't even know how well I like you yet, much less if I could spend the rest of my life with you. I think power and affluence have gone to your head, Miss French. I'll be taking my leave now. No, calm down. Please stay. I think not. Have a pleasant day, Miss French. Rob called me to his office Monday morning. I ought to fire you. My daughter cried all weekend over you. Then he grinned. You never heard me say this, but good for you. Pauline has led men and boys around by their nose since she hit puberty. It's about time she experienced the feeling that you don't always get what you want. Aside from that, you've been really good for her. Even her mother had commented on the different attitude. I myself think you have definite potential as a son-in-law. I know I'd sleep better after I retire if I knew you were by her side. That is not up to me, and I'll do my best to leave you two alone. I'll make sure Monica does the same, as hard as that will be. She's already thinking about redecorating a couple of bedrooms for children. Watch out for her son. She's coming for you with all guns blazing. I only ask if it doesn't work out that you be decent about it. Noted, sir. Well then, carry on. Marta noticed my mood instantly. Trouble in paradise? If Miss French calls, take a message. Do not put her through. If she tells you she's coming down, give me enough warning that I can be out of the office. If you think I'm avoiding her, you are as perceptive as always. I'm not running from her. I'm just afraid if she pushes my buttons right now, she'll find the one that says detonate, and she does not want to do that. I don't want to do that because there would be no going back. I need a little time and space before I talk to her again. Her eyes widened. This was a side of me she'd never seen. I didn't raise my voice, didn't say disparaging things, but she knew I meant every word of what I was telling her. She grinned. Yes, sir, boss. Ain't love grand? I wouldn't know. If I ever find out, I'll describe it to you in excruciating detail. It may take days. She was smiling as she went back into her office. I heard the phone ring several times, and at lunch, she poked her head in the office. Lunch? I've learned your language, Marta. What you mean is you're hungry and want me to take you to something better than a pizza place. Let's go. She almost got into the car on the wrong side before remembering. If she kills you, can I have your car? Do you even know how to drive? No, but if I had this thing, I'd definitely learn. She was saying as she sank into the soft leather, fiddling with the controls until she had them just right. I'd found a little Creole restaurant one day while I was out just driving, familiarizing myself with the streets of my new home. It was small, with no decor, no soft lighting or fawning waiters. You walked up to the counter, read the list of what was available that day, and ordered. If you were eating there, an ancient waitress led you to a table. Usually, the table had someone already there. The first time I looked at the waitress and she grinned. Ain't got the space to put one guy at a table. You eat where we set ya, or y'all getting it to go. I came to enjoy the random table mates. Some were in construction, some secretaries or cubicle drones. Some were doctors, lawyers, or other professional people. I played a game. If I was with the regular people, I'd let my Carolina accent come out. If it was a bunch of suits and ties, I sometimes used my English to impress them. I almost got banned once for bringing Carmela and Leslie with me. They were dressed in jeans and cute tops and almost makeup-free. They still turned heads, but no one recognized them. Not too many fashionistas in a place like that. They went on and on about the food and mentioned it one day on one of those fluff television shows as one of their favorite restaurants in their hometown. Business picked up until there was a line out the door by noon every day. Somehow the owner found out I was responsible for their free advertising, and she thanked me and chewed me out at the same time. Since then, most of the time I got it to go. The owner grinned when she saw us and made a beeline to my table. "You show up with another beautiful woman? Eh? Cher, you gonna kill me?" "Yes, you are." She was laughing when she said it, and Marta surprised her by speaking to her in French, or rather, in Haitian Creole. I spoke fluent French, but the dialect made it hard to keep up. I think they would have still been talking if we hadn't had to go back to work. She said a few more things to Marta as we left, and Marta blushed a deep red. "What did she say to you?" "Nothing." Seriously, what could she say to Miss Calm and Collected that could make her blush? Marta went quiet until we got to our parking lot. Just before we exited the car, she spoke. "She says you're going to be my man." Said she had the sight and knew it to be true. Mona also said she was going to have her cousin work a spell and make me a potion to make it happen. I thought about that for a second before I grinned. Well then, I'll be making the tea and coffee from now on. Wouldn't want a little something special added to the cream, would we? Her spirit was back and she grinned. "If I wanted you bad enough, I wouldn't need a potion. I'd have the keys to your heart before you knew there was a thief in the house." With that, she flounced back into the building, putting a little extra sway in her tiny, but very well-defined, hips. I followed, wondering if all this was really worth it. A couple of days went by. I heard Marta in hushed conversations several times, and on the third day, she walked into my office. "Lunchtime. You're dining at Amaretto's. And you're dining with a companion. Please do this, and resolve things before it drives me crazy." I've talked to her 3 times, and she says she'll behave. If she doesn't, walk out. She turned and started out, stopping just before she went through the door. "Remember, you're to be mine. She's just a placeholder until I can get your full attention. In case you're wondering, my love potion came. Did your coffee taste a little funny this morning?" "It was fine, but tell me something. How come I've never noticed your halo of stars and bluebirds before now?" Her laugh floated through the door with a parting shot. "Maybe you haven't been looking at me in the right light. Enjoy lunch." It was, in a word, tense. I stood when she came in and seated her. I was drinking a really nice tea and she wanted wine. She started to talk and I stopped her. "Not now. After we're done with lunch we'll talk. Let's not ruin a good meal." We ate in mostly silence, and when we were through, we settled down with coffee and another decadent dessert. Is it all right to talk now? If it is, let me apologize. I've always been intense, always gotten what I wanted, and it just never occurred to me you might object to the agenda. Therein lies the difference in us, Miss French. You've always gotten what you wanted until you didn't want it anymore. I'm well aware of your failed relationships, especially your 2 failed engagements. It may surprise you, but you're not as universally loved as you think. I had people lining up telling me to avoid you like the plague. I really think no one had spoken to her like that before. The shock was plain on her face and tears were starting to trickle down her cheeks. The confusion when I took her hand and smiled was also evident. That being said, I find you enjoyable to be around as long as the princess is held in check. You're beautiful, mentally stimulating, and smoking hot in bed. All qualities I admire. Let me tell you about myself. First and foremost, I don't play games. You ask me what I think and I'll tell you, even if you don't like it. Up until I took this job, my life was one long example of dramatics, and I'm happy to say it's behind me now. Now then, if you can stop planning the rest of my life and let things develop naturally, I would like to see you again. You've been warned, Miss French. Any game playing at all will result in a permanent split, and should we develop feelings and then you decide you'd like to take a better offer, you look me in the eye and tell me. Before you act on it. Do you understand? She wrapped her arms around me, and the smirk was back. I think I can safely say that will never happen. Let's go dancing Friday. I'd say Saturday, but thanks to what you did, I have to get up at 5 Sunday so we can be on the streams at daylight. Your father has had a grin on his face all week. I hope you give him the dream he's always wanted. She got really quiet for a minute. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for not fishing with him when I was a child. Even if it doesn't live up to last week, we'll still have the memories. Good for you then. I'm sure you'll tell me all about it Monday while we're in conference. In mind-numbing detail. I'll probably have pictures. Even better. I was smiling when I got back to the office. I think Marta frowned a bit, but soon the smile was back. Over afternoon tea, she did a little teasing. Jason Jr. and Maria. I beg your pardon? Jason Jr. and Maria. That's to be the names of our first 2 children. I had to wonder how serious she was taking this. The first 2? How many are we going to have? We're going to have babies until you tell me to stop. I think 4 is a good number, but 5 is even better. I looked at Marta and smiled. She was barely 5 feet tall and probably didn't weigh 100 pounds. The vision of her 9 months pregnant was very pleasant. I concede the 2. We'll negotiate the others. Her smile was dazzling. No, we won't. The only way we would stop would be for us to stop making love. And I know for a fact after you sample this island goddess that will never happen. Back to work. Your halo is getting bigger. She looked over her shoulder, grinning. I know. I gave you a second dose. Pauline picked the venue, an old-time ballroom with an orchestra of at least 20. The atmosphere was perfect, muted lighting with small lamps on the table. There was even a girl dressed in a short uniform walking around with a strap across her shoulders holding a large tray. I hadn't noticed anyone smoking and grinned when she came to the table. Her tray was filled with fresh-cut flowers. I bought a red rose and put it in a vase that was on the table for just that purpose. I didn't ask the price. The place was upscale to the point that asking prices would have been bad form. I probably paid her twice what she would have normally gotten as a tip and asked a question. Who came up with this? The girl couldn't be much past her teens, and her outfit was both sexy and demure at the same time. Mine, she said as she smiled. My uncle owns the place and offered me a job as a waitress, but I pitched this idea and he loved it. He doesn't have to pay me and I keep all the profits. I work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and make more than many with regular jobs. It helps pay my college expenses. I hope you're pursuing a business degree, Pauline said as she held the rose. Marketing and small business, the girl replied as she moved away to another customer. By the end of the night, there were half a dozen roses on our table, and the young lady wrapped them for her to take home as we left. We drank a little, 1 bottle of champagne between us. It was a good year. My mother was close friends with the owners. We spent most of the night dancing. The band had a good variety in their playbook, going from sedate waltzes to the jitterbug, the foxtrot, and other pieces. I knew most, and we faked the rest, laughing as we made mistakes. They had a vocalist I thought was woefully underutilized. Her range and depth were something you didn't run across every day, and she got everything she could out of every song. At the end of the night, Pauline went home with me, and we made love, a gentler coupling than our last encounter. It was just as good but different. She was responsive to everything we did. When we were done, she snuggled into me crying lightly as she drifted off to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, the beast came roaring back, and I thought for a minute we might break the bed, but it seemed made of sturdy stuff and resisted all our efforts. We woke up as daylight streamed in, snuggled for a minute, then decided to shower together. It took 2 showers before we were clean. What would you like to do tonight? Sleep, I said as I grinned at her. We both have to get up very early, so we're going to have to go to bed early. I'd like you to stay again tonight. If that's all right, we'll have to run by your house sometime and get the stuff you'll need. And by going to bed early, I mean early to sleep. In that case, I vote we go to be extra early and not for sleep. 8 o'clock bedtime for us then. I was thinking maybe 7. Maybe. We managed to miss her parents while she picked up her gear. She sent her father a text telling him she'd be up and waiting by 6, and we were off. We goofed off all day, going to a matinee movie and then window shopping at the high-end mall in which the theater was located. She was looking through a window at something and smiling when the smile froze on her face. I looked around to see a man and woman with a small child, and the woman was very pregnant. Their eyes met and held for a second, and then they looked away. When I got closer, it hit me who it was. Bob, her first fiancé, and his family. Earlier in the week, I had a visitor. It was Bob. I kind of remembered meeting him, but couldn't place him. He introduced himself as Bob. Talk to you a minute? Marta got him a coffee and shut the door. He got right to the point. I don't know if you remember me. I'm the receiving manager here, but I just got a promotion. Effective next week, I'll be the receiving coordinator for all the plants. He seemed really proud, so I congratulated him. He thanked me and got to the point of his visit. I used to be engaged to your girlfriend. We were pretty close through the last of high school and most of college, but she was kind of flighty, even back then. She'd be all over you for a week, and then move on to someone else. The last time we were together, I thought she had grown up, and we were making all kinds of plans when she came back from a business trip, told me she had found her soulmate and moved away to be with him. I'm sure you've heard the story of what happened then. I wasn't particularly keen on talking to you, but her father asked me to. He's a good man and I'd do just about anything for him, but I'm uncomfortable with this. He shrugged. Maybe she's finally grown up. If you two get as serious as Rob seems to want, just be careful. She's a loving and wonderful woman when she wants to be. When she's not, well, she's just not. I wish you the best, but tread carefully and keep your eyes on her. That's probably not the best way to start a relationship, but it is what it is, and her track record is really not the greatest. I sat and thought for a while after he left. Everyone from her father on down seemed to have faith that she was going to hurt me if we continued. And now he was in front of us. Jason, Pauline, how are you? Jason, I don't think you've met my wife. He introduced his wife and child as he fondly touched her stomach. And this is Emma, when she decides to get here. I think it's going to be pretty soon. His wife giggled. He keeps saying that, but in reality, I have another 6 to 7 weeks to go. If she's like our first, the time will seem like a year. They talked for just a second before leaving. Pauline had little to say, and when we stopped for a coffee, I asked her about it. I was surprised at how honest she was. I was kind of in love with him for most of my teen years in college. When we finally got serious, I was the happiest woman in the world. We weren't that far from the wedding when I went on that business trip. When you get down to it, I think it was just pure lust taking over when I met Jameson. He was pretty, easy to talk to, and built like a Greek god. I have a feeling that some part of me realized all he wanted out of me was a roll in the hay, but I fell for it anyway. He was in my bed by the second day, and didn't leave until it was time for me to go home. It came out later that his pregnant wife was on a trip, and that's how he had time to shack up with me. She took a minute, a tear rolling down her cheek. I'll never forget the look on Bob's face when I told him we were over. I think it was part sadness and part resignation. He once told me that deep down he knew it was never going to last. That hurt. Of course, when I got back and declared my love for Jameson, he panicked. Then he told me he was married and offered to put me in a love nest, so I'd be available whenever he could slip away. I was mortified and deeply ashamed. I couldn't face going home to my father and seeing Bob's face when the story got out. So I found a job 100 miles farther north and stayed until Dad came and dragged me home. And there's the sad tale of what happened. What happened to Jameson? For the first time she smiled, and it was not a pleasant one. When Daddy found out what I'd done with the man, he was furious. If you're a company, it's financial suicide to piss off your biggest customer. When his boss found out why he lost his business, the guy was toast. Even though he lied to me, I asked Dad to show a little mercy. The guy had a wife and 2 small children. He didn't totally destroy him, but he did set back his career by years. The last I heard, and this has been years ago, the wife is the main breadwinner now. They stayed together, but she didn't trust him, and life has been pretty miserable for him. We all pay for lapses of judgment. I saw her flinch and took her hand. I wasn't speaking about you. There have been times in my past when I did things that on reflection weren't the most thought-out courses of action. Most normal people regret decisions they made in anger or pain, and there's a few instances when I would have loved to have a do-over. But in the real world, you live with your actions, be they good or bad. Then you try not to make those mistakes again. That was very well put, honey. There have been many, many times when I wished I'd done something different. But if we're smart, we try not to repeat the bad decisions we've made. I could be the poster child for bad decisions. I just want you to know that I have learned, and I don't want to look back on my mistakes. I prefer to look forward to my successes. And while I know you don't want to hear it yet, I'm going to count you as my greatest success, proof that I beat the odds. Don't dwell on it, but I speak the truth. It was an impressive speech and almost had me convinced, but experience had taught me time was the best judge of promises. We went home, and were naked within minutes and exhausted by 9. Asleep before 10? I mused as I held her snuggled to me that life could be very pleasant with her. The alarm went off at 4:45 and Pauline groaned, slapped her phone, and rolled back over. She would have gone right back to sleep, but I jumped up, yanked the covers off her, and swatted her very well-formed hips. She jumped up with fire in her eyes and then grinned. Thanks, honey. I'm guessing you'll be the official getter-upper in the family. Gotta fly. She was showered and dressed in 20 minutes, her equipment gathered and in the boot of her car. Wish me luck. You used up all your luck the first time you fished. People go their whole lives and never land a fish like you did your very first try. Have a good time. She grabbed my butt, gave me a very nice kiss, and was gone. I showered and dressed, getting ready for my date. Monica was ready when I got there. We put her clubs in the boot beside mine and were off. We had a 9 o'clock tea time, which gave us just enough time for a light breakfast before we hit the course. She hadn't golfed in almost a year. She loved it, but Rob would rather fish, and she thoroughly enjoyed the 18 holes. We paired up with a judge and his wife, and they were fast friends by the fourth green. Bonnie laughed as I bent over for a putt. I know who you're married to, Monica. Is this fine young man your boy toy? I wish, she said, enjoying the flinch just as I struck the ball. He looks absolutely delicious naked. Fortunately, I have hopes he'll end up as a son-in-law. I'm going to do everything in my power to make it so. They giggled and then Bonnie looked at her husband. Well, if it doesn't work out, call me. We'll share. I missed my second putt and looked up grinning. Hasn't anyone ever told you it's poor manners to talk while a person is concentrating on a putt? Perhaps you'd like to come over here so I could make better use of my mouth. As she said it, she licked her lips. Her husband was trying miserably not to laugh while Monica went red. Bonnie was 67. I found out later, but she was a very well-preserved, very hot 67. I'd have guessed she was close to Monica in age, and she was 51. So that's the way it's going to be. All right then. At the next tee, when she bent over, I whispered to Monica, who burst out laughing just as she swung. What the hell was that? Oh, Jason just observed as you bent over to put your ball on the tee that you have a very nice rump, and he wondered what it would look like with bite marks all over it. That's not true, Monica. I said nice bum, not rump. The judge shanked his tee shot and pretended to glare at us. Do I have to issue a gag order here? And Jason, I can tell you that her hips looks very nice with teeth marks across it. I think I have pictures if you're interested. None of us scored particularly well, but we had more fun than anyone on the course. At the end of the round, the ladies went to freshen up and the judge grinned at me. You know, I watched you play once on television. It was that Pro AM Invitational in the Caymans 3 years ago, some sort of tie-in with a modeling event. If I remember correctly, you and your partner came in second, losing by 2 strokes to the best golfer in the world at the time. Care for a serious round after lunch? You of all people know the course is booked months in advance, and it will be impossible to get an opportunity to play this afternoon. Besides, the only reason we came in second is because my partner was the #1 female golfer at the time. He just grinned and called a couple of men from 2 tables over, asking if they'd like to make it a foursome. Besides being a judge, he was also the president of the board of directors for the club. There was absolutely zero chance they would refuse. We enjoyed a nice lunch and I grinned at Monica. This is where we part ways. If you would follow this nice young lady, she'll tell you what you're going to do for the next few hours. I'll be back to pick you up at 4:30. I didn't give her a chance to say anything, getting up and leaving her in the hands of her personal attendant. She was to be given every service the spa offered while I golfed with the judge. I managed to get his wife included at the last minute, warning her I better not hear about any fresh bite marks when she was through. I could hear their voices getting louder and more animated as we left. These guys were serious golfers, very low handicaps and completely immersed in the game. We chatted some on the first 9, but it got serious on the turn. Jay and Derek grinned. Usual terms? Absolutely. He turned to me so they couldn't see the smirk on his face. We play for 100 a hole. 2 teams, no captain's choice. You play your ball where it falls. You in? They beat us the first 2 holes before we hit stride. Between us, we had 3 birdies, 3 pars, and a hole in one, winning 6 of the holes and 300 apiece. The last hole was a par 3, 120 yards from the box to the hole, and the green had a 12-degree slant away from the box. It was very easy to overshoot. I took a wedge, just trying to get close. The ball hit the edge of the green and very, very slowly rolled to the hole, teetering a second before falling in. The other guys were giving the judge grief for bringing in a ringer, but were grinning the whole time. In the history of the course, there had only been 5 before me to ace it. I reflected as we sat in the clubhouse how much being a member here was costing me. I had to stand rounds over the fish, and now over the hole-in-one. The place was pretty loud, and then suddenly got quiet. Monica and Bonnie had returned from their afternoon, and I reflected that they were worth every dime I'd spent. They may have been mature ladies, but they rocked. Bonnie had gone pure white with her hair, washing out the color. It hung in shiny ropes on her shoulders, touching the light gray silk sheath she had on. Her shoes were a matching gray, her eyes done in a smoky hue that set them off. Monica had on a wraparound dress that was a vivid red with tiny white polka dots. It just barely reached her knees and the style left the front a little open, giving glimpses of very impressive cleavage and a flash of thigh now and again as she walked towards us. Her hair was 3 shades lighter, with highlights that glimmered like reflected sun. Her makeup was perfect, as well. She threw her arms around my neck, and I had to try and stop her from crying so she wouldn't ruin her makeup. Bonnie just grinned, and when Monica let go, she jumped into my arms and the kiss she gave me wouldn't pass a grandmother test. The judge laughed as she dabbed my face to get the lipstick off. Then she leaned in and whispered, I got my very first wax today, and for the first time in my life, I'm wearing a thong. Bloody thing is as uncomfortable as hell, but it makes my hips look damn good. All I need is a couple of bite marks, and it would be perfect. I'm sure the judge will rectify that as soon as you show him what's under that dress. Damn right he will. He may have to take 2 little blue pills tonight. If Monica's daughter doesn't work out, I have 2 granddaughters. They're almost as hot as me. Say the word and I'll introduce you. Can I have them both? She giggled. If you can handle them. They're twins. I grinned, wondering what she'd think if she knew it wouldn't be the first time I'd had twins in my bed. Monica smiled all the way to her house. Thank you, Jason. I need it today. Things have been a little stale lately for me and Rob. Too much information, Monica. One look at you now should wake him up. Did you notice how many looks you got? She smiled. Yes, I did. All from men like the judge. You obviously weren't paying attention. I had 2 men who I'm pretty sure weren't in their 40s yet ask me if you were single, or if you and I were in a serious relationship. And when that caddy came in to collect his foursome, he was so distracted looking at you, and Bonnie the men had to push him out the door. She flushed and then laughed. I feel so alive. Rob better take some vitamins tonight. He was up early. Don't wait. Jump him as soon as you hit the door. When was the last time you enjoyed a romantic interlude in the middle of the day? Not since Pauline was 2. This empty nest thing might just work out. Then she grinned. That does not mean I'm opposed to grandchildren. The beauty of grandchildren is you can spoil them rotten, pour sugar into them, and then call mom and dad to pick them up. I'm hoping I get to do that soon. I'm not getting any younger here. You couldn't prove it by me. And here we are. Rob and Pauline were waiting by the door when we arrived, no doubt to regale us with fish stories. But when Monica got out of the car and seemed to glide across the driveway, both of them lost their train of thought. She kissed Pauline on the cheek and laid a lip lock on Rob. Then she pushed him back. You smell like a fish, honey. Run on up to the shower while I say goodbye to the children. Then I'll be up to wash your back. He stood for a minute before bolting through the door, calling his goodbyes out over his shoulder. Monica hugged us both and pushed us out the door. Pauline had little to say for most of the drive. Then she grinned. All right, what did you do to Mom? I played a round of golf with her, then played another round with Judge Adler while she took advantage of the amenities of the spa. I think she needed reminding that she was still a beautiful and desirable woman. A fact your father is rediscovering just about now, unless I miss my guess. If the old saying about how you can tell how your wife will look in 20 years by looking at their mother is true, you're going to be one very hot grandmother. She positively glowed. Marta was not smiling when I showed up for work Monday. You sure about this, boss? Sure about what, my little island goddess? She colored up nicely and almost giggled before composing her face again. Pauline, are you sure she's a good choice? I'm not just saying that because you're supposed to be mine. I'm saying it because of her history. She's already bragging about the house you two will live in. Plus, she's getting someone to investigate you. You know this how? The PAN. Sounds like some sort of secret organization. It is. It stands for the Personal Assistant Network. We talk, you know, and a lot of it has been about you. Before you say it, we never betray the trust of our bosses. But everybody is pretty much fair game, and most of what we talk about is public knowledge. A couple of the girls really do not like her. At all. Good information to have. Do they know about our future? Of course they do. Beverly and Shannon have gotten spells and potions as well. Management better watch out. Noted. Now, can we get some actual work done? We spent most of the day planning for a trade show we were attending. We were going to roll out some new products and do a lot of networking. The team I had put together were going to go down 2 days before to set up. Marta and I were flying in the night before, and between all of us the booth would be manned while Marta and I networked the big boys. Just before we left for the day, she took my hands in hers and she had tears in her eyes. Mona told me you were going to marry her, that she was going to break your heart, and that after you'd cleared your head, fate would put us together again. I want you to know I think you're worth waiting for, even if it does break my heart. Then she cheered up. Angelique? What? Our second daughter. We'll call her Angel, for short. I hugged her sadly. You are a very complex woman, Marta. You tell me I'm going to marry a woman who will break my heart, then tell me the name of our second daughter. It just occurred to me. Would I even get any say in their names? Her dazzling smile showed through. Not the first 3. Sybil has already seen them. She says Angel will be a blonde and look a lot like her grandmother. She says you get to name the next 2. Well, thank you for that consideration. How did you know my mother was a blonde? I didn't until she told me about the hair. Then I looked her up. She's a very lovely woman. That gave me a lot to think about on the drive home. 3 weeks later, after a rousing round of sex, as we lay in post-sexual bliss, I asked Pauline a question. Did the investigators find anything interesting in my background? Anything you want to ask me about? She stiffened and sat up. How did you know? I wasn't about to expose Marta. Most of the people you talk to are still my friends. It didn't occur to you one might let me know someone was poking around? That part was true. 5 different people had called, including Leslie and Carmela. Even more had been concerned and passed their thoughts along through the others. I'd called the girls right after Marta had told me, and they warned everyone else. So the investigators learned very little that wasn't public knowledge. Your friends seemed to be very loyal. I think the whole thing became a game to them. They'd tell the investigators all kinds of wild tales about you, or just smile and walk away. Even in bars and restaurants, they seemed to know who the investigators were. Then they started playing games, having their rental cars towed, using computers to check them out of their lodgings, reporting their credit cards as being stolen. The whole thing was very frustrating for them. 2 gave up in disgust and quit. Then she smiled. They did talk to one model who was very unflattering to you. A little digging brought to light it was just sour grapes after you dumped her. What did she do that would make you get rid of someone that's smoking hot? Beauty isn't always just on the outside. We made promises and she broke them. Very few people ever get second chances with me. She stiffened a little. Are you angry with me? Not really. You could have just asked your father. He had me checked out pretty thoroughly, and I told my friends to be honest with him. You know he would never have shared that. There are lines he won't cross, and business is kept completely apart from personal matters. I've decided it doesn't matter, and that we each have to take each other at face value. Good thinking. If one of us does something, the truth always finds a way to come out. All that being said, I think we should go to the next level. I haven't been seeing anyone else, but if you have, we need to make this exclusive. Do you agree? She nearly threw me out of the bed the way she swarmed me. I haven't been with a man since 3 months before we met, and you're the only one for me. How exclusive? Dating exclusive or cohabitating exclusive? I smiled at her enthusiasm. Dating for now. If we don't get derailed, the next will come shortly. This train ain't coming off the tracks. French Enterprises was starting to get a lot of attention thanks to my public relations work, our trade show booths, and our charitable enterprises. I had worked out a deal with Rob that had him sending his more promising employees to community college, paid for by the company. We had 8 in the program and 20 more applications. In the months that followed, Pauline and I drew closer. Leslie and Carmela were still cautious, but accepting. I had moved out of their condo and gotten one of my own. Pauline was living with me full-time by then, and we were very happy. On our 1-year anniversary, she surprised me by dropping to her knee and proposing. It's been a year since we moved in together. If I haven't proven myself by now, we have no future. If that's true, it will break my heart, but I'll move out immediately. I grinned and pulled the box out of my pocket. Well then, it looks like I need to seal the deal. Pauline Amanda French, will? Absolutely. Yes. Hell yes. Now put that ring on my finger. When we made the announcement, her parents seemed happier than we did. Marta had been getting more and more withdrawn, and when the announcement came out, she put in her notice. I tried to talk her out of it, but she was adamant. I can't stay here and watch you get hurt, no matter how much I love you. You remember this, Jason Grant Halston. Even if you don't see it now, I'm still destined to be your soulmate. You won't hear from me, but I'll be keeping an eye on you. I really hope it lasts and you find happiness. She was gone. We'd been married a year and a half. Pauline was 32, not in the danger zone, but the window was closing, so I brought up the subject of children. I was surprised when she hesitated. We're still young. Let's enjoy a few more years before we settle down. As far as I'm concerned, we are settled down. Your clock might not be ticking, but mine is. Think about it, will you? Things were a little uneasy for a while before we fell back into our patterns. Pauline had to travel a few days a month, usually just day trips and back before bedtime. Once a month she was at the facility 4 states away, so she stayed overnight and packed as much work as she could into the 2 days. I would go with her when I could, but I had my own set of responsibilities, and I gradually just let her go on her own. I'd catch her staring vacantly out the window and wonder if she was thinking about children. It seemed high time to revisit that discussion. Then I ran into Bob's wife at a restaurant. I really didn't remember her, but when she introduced herself, I invited her to share my table. Her husband had streamlined the supply chains and all the plants, and his cost-saving methods did not go unnoticed. Rob had given him a car as a bonus. It was a Cadillac SUV with all the bells and whistles. Gina immediately took it away from him, declaring it the perfect mommy mobile. We talked about her husband, the car, She showed me pictures of her 3 kids, and I told her I hoped that soon I'd have a photo or 2 to share. She looked at me oddly. That's good, Jason. It seems you're recovering very well. When I heard you were separated, I thought your marriage was over. I'm glad you worked out your problems. My instincts kicked in, and I kept my voice neutral. Thank you, Gina. Not many people knew about the separation. How did you find out? I'm sorry, but it's pretty common knowledge at the Jefferson plant, especially after she dated Robert Sinclair. They were pretty hot and heavy for a while, but then it cooled. I'm glad. He was a bit of a player. We ended lunch and she caught my mood. I'm sorry if I brought up old hurts, Jason. Bob thinks the world of you and says you're one of the best things to happen to the company in a long while. I kissed her cheek. Don't upset yourself, Gina. It's all water under the bridge now. Tell Bob I said hi. I thought about it for a little, then I decided to investigate. If it was all rumors and gossip, I'd let it go. If there was the least amount of truth in what Gina had said, my future with Pauline would be over. Looking through my old contacts, I found the number I wanted. Fred Johnson wasn't a private detective. He was a security consultant with a global company I had used time to time in my old career. I gave him a call and we caught up for a minute. Freddie, this isn't a social call. I have a target I need investigated and it's hot. I'll send a dossier and photos within the hour. Spare no effort on this and take a month. She travels and I want a full picture. Can you do it? Of course I can, my friend. She'll have 4 people on her round the clock starting next week. How dirty do you want this? Should we hack her electronics? Absolutely. I want everything. Phone calls, emails, texts, the works. Take a lot of pictures, especially if she seems to be up to something. I have to ask, if this business or personal? Personal. There was a long silence. All right. I'm sorry, my friend. Don't be. There may be nothing to worry about, but I'd rather know than not know. Thanks, Fred. The next month was difficult for me. Pauline caught on and asked me if I was all right. I put it off on stress from work, and she stayed pretty close to me. Neville called at the end of the month. There's really nothing to report. She went to work, then home or her hotel room. She never spent any inappropriate time with anyone. The tone of his voice knew he had something else. But, well, she seems to have had a romance at one of the plants she called on a few months ago. It went hot and heavy for 3 months and then stopped. It's all hearsay, and we have no proof, just what we overheard from the office workers. That and her lover bragged about bagging the wife of a hotshot from the home plant. Mostly, though, I'm concerned about what my operatives heard in a restaurant, at a meal she had with a coworker. Let me play you the conversation. An unknown voice came on, a woman. So, Han, how's the love life? Pauline was instantly recognizable. As good as it gets, with the hubby. He really is a good lover. That's it. You're not playing anymore? I didn't say that. Jason was giving me a strange vibe this month, so I've been a good girl, just in case he suspects anything. I doubt he'd have me investigated, but better safe than sorry. I'll give it another month to cool down. Then I think I'll play until January. That's when I'm going off the pill and start our family. That was all I needed to hear. The investigation was costing me roughly $150,000 a month, but I considered it money well spent and I could afford it. She lasted another 5 weeks. Then she seduced a customer on one of her day trips, working until noon and then playing until it was time to come home. I had video and audio and should have pulled the trigger then, but morbid curiosity got the best of me. She played with an employee of the company on another trip and picked up a random stranger at a bar on her overnight, screwing him until just before checkout. I thought about how to handle it and decided a picture was worth 1,000 words, printing out a still from every one of her trysts and added a few texts and emails that were particularly raunchy. I laid a note on top of it. Don't fight the divorce. I know you chose lovers that were married, so they wouldn't talk. Their wives will be getting these pictures, and more tomorrow. Let's not let it get to be too much of a public spectacle. Think about your parents and the company, and don't let the mud splatter on any of them. I'll be gone when you get back. I'm not running away, but I think it might be a spectacularly bad idea if we're in close proximity right now. Don't call, don't text. You'll be wasting your time. I popped in to see Rob, telling him I had a family emergency and was going back to England for a week or so. He was a good man and immediately offered his help if I needed it. I handed him the report on Pauline and asked him to read it after I left. It was just a document without pictures. I didn't want him or Monica see something they couldn't forget. I realized as I boarded the plane that the one I regretted most getting hurt was Monica. We had become very close and she was always over at the condo. Pauline used to laugh and remind her mother I was married to her, not the other way around. Monica always laughed and said she'd better be glad Pauline saw me first. She spent a lot of time talking about baby names, and had already decorated a nursery in her house, painting it a neutral color. Pauline looked at it with both parents. "Really, Mom?" Monica grinned. "You're not getting any younger, you know. Best to be prepared." And now I was on a plane out of their lives. It wasn't like the shit hit the fan, more along the lines of a waste treatment plant exploding. Pauline got home from her day trip, and after we landed in New York to transfer, I watched her on video as she came through the door. "Jason, honey, where are you? What a day I've had. I just want to relax, sip some wine and snuggle. We'll order in." "Jason?" I saw her looking puzzled because my Jag was still in the garage. She went to the living room first, then the bedroom, then the kitchen. When she got to the dining room, she saw the packages and idly picked one up. Her scream must have been really loud as well as it came through. Then she surprised me by fainting dead away. I sent a text to Monica saying she needed to get over as quickly as she could, and 20 minutes later, she came through the door. It wasn't locked, but even if it had been, she had a set of keys. By then, Pauline was sitting on the sofa, staring at space. She wasn't even crying, just sitting there totally blank. Monica tried several times to get her to talk before calling 911. While she waited, she reached down and picked up some papers. Then she gasped and her own tears started. Rob showed up a few minutes later with a look of thunder on his face. One look at his daughter changed that to one of concern. Pauline spent 3 days in the hospital being evaluated and treated for shock. I felt bad when I found out about it, but not much. She had to try calling me every opportunity she had, and I let it all go to voicemail. I also didn't answer texts or emails. Then Monica called. "Hi, Mom, how are you?" "Jason? Jason, honey, I'm so sorry." Pauline had a breakdown and spent 3 days at the hospital. "She's with us now, so we can watch her. Is there any way?" Her voice trailed off, realizing the futility of the question she was going to ask. "Nope, none. This wasn't a one-time slip. She's been with at least 5 different men in the last 14 months, all while I was begging her to start a family. That means she was unfaithful to me less than a year after being married. This goes a lot deeper than I think any of us realize, and I urge you to get her a counselor." She was crying brokenly, and I felt really sad for her. I tried to soothe her from 4,000 miles away, and she finally stopped. "Tell Rob I'm sorry. I'll be resigning within the month, and I'll be back in a few days to wrap some projects up and hopefully spend some time with my successor. Make it clear to Pauline she is not to contact me, speak to me, not come anywhere near me. If she does, the resignation will become immediate and I'll leave." I understand. We're really going to miss you. I'm going to miss you as well. It was like having a second set of parents, and I loved every minute of it. Monica, I don't want you or Rob to take any blame for this. I'm pretty sure you didn't do anything wrong in bringing up Pauline. She needs to find out what triggers this behavior and overcome it. I have to go now. I'll see you in a few days. When I spilled my tale of woe to my mother at her country estate, she tried to be sympathetic, but I had the feeling she had never liked Pauline and wasn't terribly upset that we had parted. I spent 2 days with her before moving to a villa in Tuscany owned by Mom's new significant other. No one knew the connection, and it would be the perfect place to isolate for a few days. That was my plan until Leslie and Carmela showed up 2 days later, and I got the same feeling from them as I did from my mother. I asked them to tell me the truth. Carmela sighed. There was something inherently unstable in her makeup. You weren't trained to notice, but I got glimpses of it from time to time. I had a long talk with her on your opinion of monogamy, and she said she was in total agreement, but the way she moved her eyes and her body language said she wasn't quite sure about it. You say she may go into counseling. That's an excellent idea. I hope whoever her counselor is, they dig until they find the root cause of her instability. If they do, they can move forward. Leslie was a little more blunt. I never liked the bitch. Never. I knew she would break your heart. Instead of offending me, it made me smile. If your friends ever reached the point that they couldn't tell you the truth, then that friendship was in deep trouble. Looking back, I can see how everyone close to me had tried gently to see what they saw, but I was so in love I didn't understand. You know, you're one of the most intuitive people I've ever met until it come to romantic entanglements. I suggest if there is a next time, you be a bit more pragmatic. Sage advice, Carmela. I probably won't take it. Some sort of character flaw, I guess, but I'll work on it. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I probably won't stay in Ohio, but beyond that, everything is up in the air. There's nothing wrong with Ohio. Spoken like a true Buckeye, Les. You could go back to your old company. It's yours after all. Michael is on the verge of a breakdown. The stress he has to deal with is getting to him. Only because he hasn't learned to tell those bitches to shut up and do their jobs. Models are like doctors. They're mostly narcissistic and have a god complex. Leslie exploded with laughter, and Carmela frowned. I strove to correct my mistake. The exception is you, soon to be Dr. Carmela. Nice semi-save, Jazz. I know what you meant. To a great degree it's true. That's why you're so good at what you did. You know exactly when to lend a sympathetic ear, or give a sharp kick in the butt. They listen to you. Know you keep their best interests at heart. They know they can trust you with their secrets and their life, if it came to it. There's been a bit of a vacuum since you moved on. Time to come back and fill it. You have to admit, it would keep you from getting bored. I wasn't bored with what I was doing. It felt good to have average people around me for a change. Know what I discovered the difference was? Nothing. Really. They had their own set of traumas and hardships, the same dreams and ambitions. They may have been more modest and muted, but they were there. They were just as prone to jealousy, anger, retribution, infidelity, or any other emotion as supermodels, business magnates, or artists, but they mostly had a better grounding. A $5,000 raise meant just as much as a $5 million contract in their eyes, and some would do anything to get it. So, you're saying everybody sucks? Yes and no. What I'm saying is we're all pretty much the same creatures of habit and environment. Damn, Jazz, maybe you should get your own PhD. Not bad for someone whose specialty used to make the beautiful look even more so. I shrugged and opened another bottle of Andre's excellent wine. I got back 10 days later and cabbed back to my condo, wondering if it would be empty. It was. On the same dining table I'd left my evidence, there was a simple letter. I don't know if you're coming back, or if you'll ever read this if you do, but I want to tell you a few things. First, I'm sorry I betrayed you. I really do love you, as much as I can grasp the concept of love. I know on a basic level why I did the things I did. I just can't understand why I keep repeating them. I have a feeling you were my last chance at happiness, and I destroyed that pretty thoroughly. I've had a session a day for the last week with a really expensive counselor, thanks to my parents, and he seems to think I'm afraid of real life. His words, not mine. Me, the pampered princess, daughter of one of the richest men in the state, who has almost always gotten what she wanted since she was 6, afraid of common things like commitment and children, especially children. He said in our last session that I was probably the most spoiled person he's ever met. I told him about you, and he looked you up. I saw most of what he had, and he must have had better investigators, or your friends thought it really didn't matter now, but he had quite a different opinion of you. He said your reputation as a hard-nosed businessman was well known in the business, as well as your efforts to do the absolute best for whoever you worked with, and your generosity with your friends. I know you'll never forgive me, and if I thought I had any chance at all of getting you back, I'd beg on my knees in front of everyone for you to take me back. Instead of the drama, I'm giving you a gift. Get a lawyer, write up a fair divorce, and I'll sign it when my lawyer looks it over. You keep what's yours, I'll keep what's mine, and we'll join the ranks of the once married. I will tell you I took a few things that had meaning to me from the condo. Nothing valuable, just the things that held fond memories for me. If you see something missing that you wanted, just let my lawyer know. I won't fight over whatever it is and return it. I know it isn't much, but that's all I can say. I'll always love you, always regret what I did, and wish you a happy life. Think of me from time to time. Happy memories, and smile. I will. She didn't sign it. She didn't have to. I was in Rob's office the next day, and he had a look of profound sadness. I was really hoping this was the one. Monica and I have grown to love you like the son we always wanted. She's still crying. Maybe you can take her to lunch, or better yet have dinner with us. I know you want to leave, but please, reconsider. I had visions of turning the business over to you and Pauline in 5 years or so and retiring early, taking Monica on a world cruise or long vacation, then coming home to spoil the grandkids. You would have made an excellent CEO. I doubt Pauline will ever be ready to take the reins. I'll probably sell the businesses when I'm tired of running them. Rob, I'll always be grateful for the job you gave me and the trust you had in me, but it's time to move on. I'm sure you knew my answers and are already looking. I hope I'm around long enough to help you, but in 30 days I'm moving to Europe, at least for a while. I looked up at his fish photo and smiled. The girls aren't moving, and they'll need a fishing buddy, so I'm sure they'll stay in touch. Make sure Monica keeps playing golf, and make sure you pay the attention to her she deserves. She stood by you during the long hours and missed celebrations while you built your business, and now it's time to pay it back. Monica cried when I came over for dinner, almost constantly, but both Rob and I were gentle and understanding, and she actually smiled there at the end. I took her to lunch a couple of times and teased her as Giuseppe drooled over her from afar. Rob and I fished twice more on Holloway Mountain before I left. I sat on the plane and wondered how he would like my goodbye gift. I'd stood them for membership to the club, paying 5 years in advance when they were approved. They should be getting the acceptance letter anytime now. I had a visitor 2 days before I left. I'd already gotten my PA reassigned to a good man and was just tidying up when I heard the knock. It was Bob, and he had a sad smile on his face. I wanted to talk to you before you left. I'm probably the only one in Ohio who can understand how you feel. She broke my heart, and I didn't make it to the marriage. Gina says I shouldn't hold a grudge, but I still have unresolved issues I keep buried. That's not what I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about Gina. She brought me around, showed me that true love was still possible. 7 years in, and I'm still convinced she walks on water. You're a good man, Jason. Your Gina is out there somewhere. May good luck follow you in your life from now on. And just like that, he was gone. It did make me feel better. 18 months went by. I spent a month at the Tuscan villa, soaking up solitude and healing. I started out small, but soon I was back in the driver's seat of my old company. I never sold it, just turned the day-to-day operations to my subordinates while I went off and played at being a middle manager. I dated after a few months, and with my looks, wealth, and business connections, I had women throwing themselves at me. It was fun, and getting all sweaty with models and heiresses can never be underrated, but usually by the 4th date they realized I wasn't ready to commit. The ones who wanted substance faded away. The ones that just wanted to have a good time stayed in my orbit. Still, empty fun is better than no fun. Carmela came to me with a business deal. She wanted to buy a minority share of my business and give it to Leslie, something she was a bit familiar with and hopefully not take a lot of training. I thought about it and agreed, selling her 10% with an option to buy 15% more over the next 5 years. After that, whenever we did a shoot together, Leslie wore 2 hats, model and businesswoman. Carmela and I had coached her, and she had developed far beyond the shy beauty she had been when she first started. We contracted with a sports magazine to do a swimsuit spread. Pretty run-of-the-mill stuff until we ran into a problem. There was a young model, just 18, who found out she wasn't getting the cover and became a big problem. She disrupted 2 days of shooting, and in most businesses, and especially ours, time is money. Leslie was handling it, and she called me, outlining what she was going to do. It sounded like so much fun I dropped what I was doing and flew out to the island location. I got there just in time to make the meeting between Leslie, the model, and her agent. I carried a manila envelope with me, sliding it over to Les. She peeked in and grinned. The agent started the meeting with the hope that we could work this out. Her stunning natural beauty should assure her the cover, and he couldn't understand why we were being so difficult. Leslie exploded. Natural beauty? There's hardly a thing natural about your client. She's had a nose job, a hairline adjustment to take out a very pronounced widow's peak. Her cheekbones have been shaved, and her lips thinned. I understand she's due some chin work after this shoot. So tell me, where is this natural beauty you go on about? She opened the envelope and a photo spilled out of the model when she was 13. Her mouth full of braces, wearing thick glasses, her thick hair going almost to her eyebrows, with a pronounced hook to her nose and a chubby face. The model took one look and fainted. She was South American, and there were several countries there where beauty was big business. If you ever see a flawless woman from one of those countries glide across a stage, it's a pretty safe assumption that how she looked now was a bit different from her early years. Les drove her point home. Regardless of how your client got her beauty, she is still an exceptionally attractive woman. This shoot will be good for her career, and maybe in a year or 2 she'll have a cover. It won't be this year. When your client wakes up, tell her that. And tell her that if she isn't on that beach ready to work by noon today, not to bother. I'll replace her in a second. I already have 2 on standby hoping she stays difficult. You should also tell her that her misbehavior will get around, and good shoots will be a little harder for her to come by, particularly with this company. Is this matter settled? I thought the agent was going to break his head off the way it was bobbing. We walked out while he woke her and explained how the real world worked. Models were commodities, like wheat or corn. If it's molded or unfit for use, the price and availability goes way down. The sooner the guys and girls learn this, the better off they are. I do have to say the newer models are a lot savvier and better educated than 10 or 15 years ago, probably because they viewed it as what it was, a business. Leslie grinned when I told her how well she did. I didn't even have to mention the vision surgery or the ear tax. There's probably not one thing that's original equipment on that girl. Can you hang around for a day or so? I have a surprise for you. I can stay until tomorrow afternoon. Then I have to meet the crew for some snow shots in the Arctic Circle. Leslie shivered. I remember my first one. I nearly froze to death. You got the sauna room set up yet? It'll be right behind the cameras. We'll shoot a minute, tops, before we hustle them into the warmth. Nothing motivates you to get it right quite like sub-freezing temperatures. Carmela flew in, and I entertained her with stories about what a tough little bitch her lover had turned into. She just smiled and hugged her tighter. We shared the suite Les had rented and spent a nice night talking about old times. We went fishing with Rob the last time we were home. Monica still tears up at the mention of you. They can't get over you giving them a membership. They deserved it. It was also a nice thing you did flying them over to visit you and your mother, as well as her new husband, at his villa. He seems a good man. He is. He lost his son in Afghanistan early in the war when the English were still heavily involved, and his daughter died of an accidental overdose at a party. He was pretty lonely until he met Mom. I've seen the pictures. You're the closest thing he has to a son left. You should have heard Monica when she talked about how impatient they were getting for grandchildren. It's still a bit early to walk that road again. I still have faith the right one will show up. I thought about their grins as I dropped off to sleep. They were up to something. Something turned out to be about 5 feet nothing of island goddess. Marta came up behind me, wondering why the girls had wanted her to come here. She had become friends with them, and they supported the literary project she headed on her home island. They had 5 schools going, and they all existed solely on donations. I sent a hefty sum twice a year, and I knew the girls had talked their friends into helping out. Thanks to the combined efforts, 220 children got an education, enough to eat for them and their families and clean clothes to wear. Marta hired the best of the parents for support roles, cooking the meals, maintaining the buildings, providing transportation, everything it took to keep the schools running. They hired the very best teachers and paid them well. Their second set of high school seniors were going to graduate soon. She saw who was sitting with them, let out a shriek that let everyone on the island know she was there, and plowed into me so hard we both went down in the sand. The girls had huge grins on their faces as they helped us up. When I sat down, she sat in my lap and refused to move. After about the 40th kiss, I managed to pry her lips off me to tell her how happy I was to see her. I've missed you, my little island goddess. I know. The priest keeps me informed. Oh, before I forget. She pulled out a little vial and dusted it across my hair and shoulders. What was that? The remainder of the love potion I've been carrying for almost 4 years. You'll never get away now. I looked down in her beautiful face and had the thought that maybe I wouldn't try so hard this time. A year later, I was standing under a bower in a garden in Tuscany, waiting for my bride. There was a preponderance of models there, most friends, and a few who wanted to see what kind of woman finally captured my heart. The string quartet started playing Canon in D, and she appeared in a lace and satin gown, a wreath of pearls and lace around her face. She held tightly to the arm of the man escorting her. I had invited Rob and Monica, and they surprised me by coming. They had become friends with Mom and my new stepfather and visited each other twice a year. When Monica met Marta and found out her parents had passed in a plane crash, she stepped in, performing mother of the bride duties. Rob decided if Monica was doing that, it was his duty to present the bride. When the priest asked who gave the bride, his voice could be heard clearly. Monica and I do. My best man grinned hugely. Carmela had on an elegant tux that matched mine, but left no doubt a woman was wearing it. Leslie was dolled up in a pink creation, standing for Marta as maid of honor. As the sun set on a glorious Tuscan day, with the scent of fresh grapes and new mown hay hanging in the air, Marta and I became one. I lifted the sheer veil from her beautiful face and shared our first kiss as husband and wife. I felt her tiny body against me and imagined I could feel a baby bump, but she was only 2 months along. The reception lasted long into the night. The last sight I saw as I took my bride upstairs was of Carmela and Leslie snugged together in a slow dance. Mom and Nigel was just past them, then Rob and Monica. Everyone was hungover a bit the next morning and a little slow. But when Marta announced that our first child would be arriving sometime in late March, the mood got festive again. I'd flown in 2 uncles from my father's side, along with their wives, 2 cousins, and their husbands. My grandfather wanted to come, but his health wasn't that good. Marta promised him we would visit within the month. 6 weeks later, we were in the mountains of North Carolina, in a big farmhouse. My grandfather was quite taken with the little goddess. The cousins, uncles, and aunts didn't know quite what to make of us, but they warmed up pretty quick. I took Marta on a few walks along the streams and fields of my childhood. She surprised me with a request. Will you buy us a vacation home here? I showed her the 80 acres I'd inherited from my father. There was a modest house there, and I had a cousin living in it and taking care of the property. Marta wasn't interested in it. She pointed to a bench halfway up a mountain. There. I want a log cabin there. Her idea of a log cabin and my idea of a log cabin were completely different. Mine had an open floor plan and hers had 2 stories and 6 bedrooms. Guess which one got built? The first time we spent the night in it, I knew one of these days we'd come and never leave. Marta traveled with me in her old position as personal assistant until she got close to her due date. I purposely handed off all my business to my partner Leslie, starting 2 weeks before the expected date and a month afterwards. Jason Halston Jr. was an easy birth, according to the doctor and nurses, but I still shudder when I saw how much pain it caused Marta. I wasn't sure I wanted her to experience that again. When I told her my thoughts, she stood as tall as her 4'11.5" would let her and gave me an earful. I never brought it up again. 2 years later, Maria joined us, and the year after that it was Angelique. I was ready to stop, but Marta got that expression on her face that told me we'd stop when she was ready to stop. The next year the twins arrived and Marta finally said enough and closed the baby factory. I got a help name then. The boy was named Andre Robert, for my stepfather and Rob. Tiny little Ashley Monica, after my mother and Monica, would grow up to be an almost exact duplicate of Marta, down to the size. She'd always be the baby of the family, and her size may have had something to do with it. Both sets of grandparents doted over the children. Monica picked out a small villa near my mother, and they bought it. An event had happened that made Rob re-examine his life goals, and he sold his businesses for a nice piece of change, and they retired. They lived in Ohio for a bit before relocating to Tuscany. I walked in one day to see them holding the twins while my mother and stepfather grinned at me. "What?" Monica said when she caught me staring. "Your children are the closest we're ever going to get to being grandparents. Get used to having us around." Both sets of grandparents went house shopping and found them a property less than 10 miles away. They moved in over the next few months after the repairs and modifications they wanted to the house were done. I came by one day to find Monica sitting in a rocking chair, holding my youngest daughter, with tears in her eyes. She was looking at a photo of Pauline. Rob called me one night in a panic. "Jason, can you come? Something's happened." I heard a great deal of pain in his voice, and my first thoughts were of Monica. "Is everything all right?" "No, Pauline died last night." They would tell me snippets about her life from time to time. She continued to see her therapist regularly and seemed much improved. 3 years later, she remarried and was very happy for a couple of years. There was even talk of trying for a child, even though she was almost 40. Then she caught him cheating. Twice. The third time she started divorce proceedings. The man thought he was going to get a gold mine in the split, but everything important was still in Rob's name. They ended up selling the house and splitting the proceeds, and Pauline had to pay alimony for 3 years. The day after the divorce was final, Rob fired him. He tried to take Pauline back to court, but his lawyer told him it would go nowhere fast and cost him a good bit. He left the area and no one cared where he went. Pauline went into a downward spiral of depression. She told Monica it was cosmic revenge for what she'd done to most of the men in her life, and she'd just have to accept it. A year later, she seemed to be coming around, and then she didn't show up for work for 2 days. Monica couldn't get her on the phone, so she went to her house and found her on the floor. There were no drugs in her system other than the normal amount of her prescriptions, and the autopsy showed it to be a heart attack. No one could explain it because she was in fairly good health. Marta and I helped make the arrangements. There were a lot of people at her funeral, many from the charity organization she had sponsored. Most were there to express their condolences, but a couple wanted to make sure the money kept flowing. By the look in Rob's eyes, I had the feeling the company sponsorship for those organizations would be coming to an end shortly. Bob and his wife Gina were there, and we talked a bit at the wake. "It's a shame," he said. "She was rich, beautiful, and had a charmed life except for her romantic struggles." I talked to her about 6 months ago, and she seemed to be on the mend, talking about a new program I'd started to allow materials to flow more freely. She seemed really upbeat. I hope she was happy there at the end. So did I. She was only 43 when she passed. I wondered what her last thoughts were, if she had time. What did she regret? What had given her joy? Rob and Monica carried on for a while, but the joy was out of their lives. Then we had the twins, and the decision was made. 10 years later, when Rob was almost 75, he and Monica invited us over for a talk. "We're getting old, son. Our time on this earth is about over. We've talked it over. Our will has been updated, and I don't want to hear any arguments. The kids will get half our estate, with Marta as executor. Between your parents and your businesses, they'll never want for money, but we want them to have it. The rest will be in a charitable trust, the Pauline French Foundation. You two will be on the board of directors." What could we say? Monica went first, 2 years later, and Rob puttered around like an old engine slowly running out of gas before he followed her in 9 months. We flew back to Ohio to lay him to rest beside his wife, in the same cemetery that held both their parents and Pauline in a family plot. Andre and Mom went shortly afterwards. Andre had left us a letter saying how much he'd enjoyed having a family again after his children had passed, and how the kids had kept them alive. I did part of his eulogy and talked about how lucky I was to have two excellent fathers over the course of my life when so many never got to experience that joy, while Mom wept softly in Marta's arms. When Mom passed and the will was read, we were stunned. We had no idea what Andre was worth, and Mom had an estate worth $3 million. We got the estate in England and the villa in Tuscany, as well as some very valuable commercial property in 4 countries. After the proper taxes were paid, we still had an amount in the tens of millions, so Marta and I retired. We still kept busy. Marta still sponsored her schools, but now that she had serious money, she expanded it to 3 times the former size. I took over the administration of the foundation. There's a large painting of Pauline in her 30s, elegant and smiling, that hangs in the entranceway of the building that houses the charity, along with lesser portraits of Rob, Monica, Andre, and Mom. I'd commissioned the paintings as a tribute to them. May they all rest in peace. We lived in Tuscany another 2 years, but with everyone gone, the place was haunted with too many memories, so we moved to our cabin. Their cousins go crazy listening to the kids talk. One minute they're speaking perfect French or Italian. The next it will be Oxford-inflected English, and the next they'll be slinging yalse around. And if they start speaking Haitian Creole, they just walk off. I'm pushing 60 now and look it, while Marta has that ageless beauty that defies time, looking as hot at 54 than she was at 34. I bet people wonder why she's with the old geezer. She says it's because I may as well be made of money, and my equipment still works. Very well. I contracted a famous painter that had specialized in animals through most of his career to paint portraits of Carmela, Leslie, Marta, and me after we pass, so we can hang in the little gallery at the charity headquarters. He painted a portrait of 2 children sledding, seconds before their senseless death, as a favor for a friend. It's not publicly shown, but I had an opportunity to see it. It will leave you with tears in your eyes when you realize the joy on their faces are just a few seconds away of being gone forever. He also painted a picture of his future wife, a successful writer specializing in children's literature, that is so well done it's like she's about to step off the canvas. His fee is pretty steep but worth it, and I just wrote him a check when he quoted a price. I organized my desk and left for the weekend. The kids were at the cabin, all of them, along with our 5 grandchildren, so far, and their spouses or lovers. It'll be a pretty full house. They're all there for our 25th wedding anniversary, and I have a special surprise for Marta. I'd gone by the Creole restaurant, now run by the children, with a request that resulted in a small vial of white powder. It looked a lot like cocaine, but was more than likely baking soda, or something along those lines. Whatever it was, it would be all over my wife by the end of the night. I considered it to be a booster shot. It'll make her halo of stars shine a little brighter. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.